Introducing our next speaker, Frank Clegg, who is the former president of Microsoft Canada. He is currently the founding CEO of Canadians for Safe Technology, a national volunteer-based organization whose mission is to educate Canadians and policymakers about the dangers of unsafe levels of wireless radiation exposure. As a former member of the industry, he will be speaking about the wireless industry's attitude towards the health risk of 5G. Mr. Clegg, it's great to have you here with us. Thank you so much for joining, and we're excited to hear your presentation. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'd like to thank those who have taken the time out of their busy schedules to join us this evening or this afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're in. I have spent my entire career in the technology industry. And as you can imagine, I've seen the tremendous benefits that technology can provide. I've also seen the tremendous harm that technology can have if it's not implemented correctly. And so I am very concerned about our implementation of wireless technology, and I'm especially concerned about its impact on children. I don't make that statement lightly. I have had the opportunity to meet with experts from around the world, experts similar to Dr. Hardell as a fellow member on this panel, experts who have done years, in some cases decades of research on wireless radiation and its impact on humans, from Harvard, from Yale, from Columbia, here in Canada, University of Toronto, as well as an expert advisor to the World Health Organization and to the another member of Al Gore's team that won the Nobel Prize. That's why I helped co-found Canadians for Safe Technology over a decade ago, and I've just joined in the last year the board of directors of the Environmental Health Trust out of the U.S. Our focus is on raising awareness and educating people around the world about the harmful effects from technology, but also how to use those effects more safely. And how to use that technology more safely. Please go to previous slide. The Environmental Health Trust is actually unique in its mandate to not only work as we do in C4ST on lobbying government to help provide safer laws and safer legislature to protect citizens, but the Environmental Health Trust is unique in that we also work directly and fund research. Next slide, please. So I do want to talk about the industry. I want to talk about our behavior or their behavior. I guess I'm not part of it now. One thing that we should all remember is that people who run corporations are responsible to their shareholders. And when the shareholders invest in the company, they expect growth. And growth comes from revenue. So anything that is going to slow down revenue growth, whether it's buying the latest hardware or software upgrade, or increasing the data plans that we have, the industry will be significantly opposed to doing anything to stop that momentum and stop its consumer and customer base from continuing to take advantage of the latest and greatest technology. So to that end, two of the areas that the industry focuses on is scientific research and also legislature. You've seen from our previous speakers that there is significant research that shows, and there's hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed, published documents and papers and reputable publications showing harm. What you also will see, if you know, or you may not notice, is that whenever a study comes out, and Dr. Hardell mentioned the National Toxicology Program, well, what happens almost within months of a groundbreaking study like that happening is you will see industry-funded scientists write a paper that is either counter to it or takes one segment of that paper and really picks at it and may point out some questions. A lot of these studies do not actually disprove the scientific research. But what they will do is add a little bit of doubt or add a conflicting opinion or actually may show there's no harm. And what happens then is that government gets constipated and doesn't act. And any inaction from government is a win for the industry because people will continue to use the technology and continue to use the devices, and which will demand more and more upgrades and more revenue. The second item that we're seeing a significant focus on is legislature. Any legislature that is being considered or being passed. I was involved in a situation in one of the states in the United States where the first layer of legislators had actually passed a bill that would actually slow down the growth or the implementation of 5G. And one of the volunteers in that area said, Frank, you could just see the plane full of lobbyists that landed lobbying the governor and the Senate, and that bill ended up getting delayed. A lot of times the bills aren't killed outright. Sometimes they're just delayed. We're also seeing in some states in the U.S. and a couple of provinces in Ontario, preemptive legislature that will actually accelerate the implementation, particularly with 5G, where they're making blanket legislative passing legislative laws that will actually accelerate the implementation of 5G towers and antennas and masts, as you refer to them in Europe. And so, in a lot of cases, in fact, in Ontario, there was a law that was passed that actually took away almost any rights or any considerations that the local towns or cities or municipalities had with the implementation of some of this technology. The other strategy that the industry will use is they will not make the statement that the technology is safe. What they will say is the technology meets federal guidelines. Now, they've added the caveat in the last few years to say if used correctly. Many of you in Europe hopefully are aware of the phone gate work that's done by Mark Arazi and his amazing team of people in France, where they've actually had the French government evaluate phones that actually break the guidelines. And so what you'll see is guidelines and warnings buried inside most of the cell phones, baby monitors, any personal device that says you have to hold the device a certain distance from your body for it to meet federal guidelines. And so there's even another caveat there that says, look, not only is this device not safe for you, but if you hold it up against your head or put it in your pocket or hold it in your bra or put it in your pants pocket, it actually can provide harm. And so but unfortunately, you will not see the industry proactively make any announcements like that or proactively make those statements, but they do have it buried several layers inside the device. Next slide, please. The other strategy that the industry is on is they are blessed with this amazing benefit that is really unique to the technology and telecommunications industry. If you're in the pharmaceutical industry and automotive or truck transportation or chemical industries, there is a process you have to go through when you bring a new product to marketplace that you have to prove it's safe. Now, we can debate how good those guidelines are and how good those procedures are, but there is at least a process. Whereas in the technology industry, what all the industry has to do is show that it meets the guidelines that are in place right now. Now, the Canadian guidelines were implemented in the 1970s, updated a little bit in the 80s, but have not had any major upgrade or improvement since that time. In the US, the Federal Communications Act, I believe the last update or major update was in the 1990s. So we're dealing with guidelines and regulations that are decades and decades old. And in fact, things like smartphones and wireless Wi-Fi routers weren't even invented or even announced or in any kind of mass production back when these guidelines were implemented. You heard Dr. Hardell, and I know Mona's going to talk a little bit about ICNIRP and some government influence, but I will make the statement that in the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen a tremendous increase in the lobbying efforts by these industry-funded and controlled organizations. We're seeing Health Canada, almost any announcement that they make now includes a reference to ICNIRP or some other organization. I was asked to speak at with a volunteer group in Bermuda. It's a small island off on the Atlantic coast of the U.S. And believe it or not, the chair of the ICNIRP Commission, Worldwide Commission, got himself on the panel that was evaluating what they should do about 5G. So that gives you the degree of focus and intensity and breadth and depth that these organizations are going to have an influence on government regulators and government sponsors. And they do present themselves as independent. A lot of them are associated with universities, but when you dig down to the next level of detail, uh, they are funded. They are funded directly and paid, or their research is funded by industry. The good news is that I think the bloom is coming off of the rose, as they say, from the technology industry standpoint. We're starting to see a lot more publication of breaches by hacks, by organizations that are just being hacked. And I think people are understanding that these organizations are just human, run by humans, and they are actually subject to any of the pitfalls that other industries can have. And I am encouraged by the fundamental shift. We're expecting companies, even though the government doesn't make you define and track what your technology and your devices do to the human population, I think people are going to start to demand that, the same as we have tracking carbon footprint. Next slide, please. I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about other solutions. There is a tremendous benefit in using fiber and other wired devices and other solutions. You will not see the industry spend a lot of time investing in that. Again, because older devices tend to work better on landline and wired structure. Plus, there's a longer term payback. And if you are an executive running an organization and you're measured on quarterly returns, you'd be very reticent to make a multi-year investment. Just as a highlight, most of you may know this already, but if you're not, that wired solutions can consume up to 10 times less energy. They're up to 100 times faster. They're more reliable. They're more resilient. There's a lot of awareness now of people about the security and privacy breaches. It's very hard to hack into. You have to physically hack in to a wired network, whereas a wireless one, the signals can be picked up. Next slide, please. There's an excellent paper written by Dr. Shockley, who's a communications and technology expert, international consultant out of the University of Colorado, who drives in and digs into this in a lot more detail. He talks about the points of failure of wireless devices and wireless solutions. He talks about power grid failure having an impact. So anybody who's interested, I encourage you to look at that. Finally, I just want to make a point about just a little bit more about financial considerations. There's been some excellent, next slide, please, an excellent work and publications. And again, if you go to the environmentalhealthtrust.org site, you'll see a lot of this in more detail. But the reinsurers, so these are the companies that insurance companies go to reinsure. So when they take a policy, a lot of times they'll send it to a reinsuring organization. And Lloyd's of London and both Swiss Re, two of the largest reinsurers in the world, have come back out with papers talking about major concerns about the potential liability to telecommunications companies and technology companies from the harmful effects of wireless radiation. And what we're seeing in a lot of instances, and again, there's been a lot of good work done in the U.S. Another organization, Tech Safe Schools, that have actually put school boards and school trustees on notice because they may actually be liable for the health effects of students and teachers. So we got involved in, just as an aside, with a local council here in Niagara Falls, Ontario, who formally asked her outside legal counsel for the council of the city for their opinion on whether the town was safe from impacts or damages from a lawsuit from the impact of wireless radiation and cell towers. And the council came back and said he couldn't say that they were. And so if you are, I completely digress, if you're involved in the cell tower mass situation, ask your local representative to have a legal opinion whether in fact they are safe and indemnified from any kind of legal action. Finally, I'll end on my point before that. Unlike any other industry, telecommunication technology industry don't have to prove they're safe. We also hear presentation after presentation and press release after press release from the industry talking about trillions of dollars of benefits of 5G. I think the last estimate was over $10 trillion of benefit. And, I don't know how many million jobs would come from the deployment of 5G technology. That may not be true. I can't comment on that. What is completely remiss in any of those discussions are the potential economic costs of that. The increased healthcare costs. We're hearing in the U.S. that it could cost up to $1 million to take care of somebody who is through the full set of cancer treatments. Lost productivity costs, the cost of security breaches, the cost of property damage, because there's estimates now that these satellites will now cause us to not be able to track hurricanes and other weather disasters coming in our area. So I'll summarize with the comment that, for now the industry has a bit of a free ride. They have the opportunity to bring products to marketplace. They've been able to sidestep any accountability for the damage from their products. All that tracking and monitoring and measuring is either being done by volunteer organizations like ours or individuals, or just regular people. It's not being done by any government agency, and it certainly isn't being done by the industry. And I think those things have to change. And I think that, I think the challenge to the industry is, as we're starting to see with the carbon footprint, if industry will step up and acknowledge that there are better ways. Let me digress with one other example. We got involved in a local school here in my community outside of Toronto, and came in and they measured, and they had just put in a wireless network. Their strategy was for the students to be able to walk around in pods and have wireless devices. So we couldn't hardwire the school. But what we did is we went in and they had professionals come in and measure the radiation levels in areas throughout the classroom. And the experts then went back, and they only did really two things. The first thing they did was that they dialed back the power setting on the routers. And everybody in the technology industry, you get measured on, I want 5 bars of service, I want immediate response time. So you're going to turn that router up to the maximum power level that you can. Second thing is they rearrange, in some cases, remove routers from the classroom. They reduced the radiation level, again, measured by professionals, by 90% exposure to the students and the teachers in those classrooms, and had zero impact on the response and the ability of the students to use their wireless networks and their wireless environments to continue their studies. So I think there's opportunities for the industry to take a leadership role, and there's an opportunity for government to educate people in terms of how to use these devices, keep them away from your body, don't sleep with them near your bed at night, that we can reduce and help take advantage of this technology, but do it in a lot safer method. So again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions, if you have any, during the panel discussion in a little while. Thank you.